ones going into the last round whose tiebreakers were not good enough to draw had to play out the last round. But this is your reward when you play and win that match. You're suddenly at the top of the standings. You get to be on the play through the top 8, and Hunter has made good use of that advantage.
Yep. All right, and now it is time to see who's going to walk away the 5K trial winner, get a nice little trophy, get a bunch of points, get some dollary dues.
Yeah. From Hunter's side in this matchup, there's a nice squeeze that the Is It Prowess deck has where you're the more aggressive deck. You're generally advantaged early. And as long as Jess doesn't turn the corner with Preacher and the other big creatures, you have the advantage going along because of the power of Storm Chaser's talent. A fully leveled level 3 talent is a backbreaker for the Dimir midrange deck. They do not deal with enchantments well. So Hunter can afford to, play the long game as long as Jess doesn't turn the corner and Hunter can contain those big creatures.
All right. First turns, both players just play a land and pass. Hunter develops a Quarry Steelcutter. Jess passes. Looks like Jess has a lot of lands in hand. Unfortunate if you're a Jess fan. As it looks like Hunter has a second Quarry Steelcutter.
And a third land.
Yeah, it seems like a really good spot just to slam and make them have to have something.
Yeah, they didn't have a Pierce last turn. I don't understand this.
Yeah, I think Hunter is just feeling really confident, and is ahead and doesn't want to lose to a top deck Pierce. I agree with you that I think this is a spot you probably want to slam. And if Jess drew Pierce, she drew Pierce, and so be it. But if she doesn't have something here, she can never win the game.
Yeah, and you especially want to go wide against things like Preacher. Hunter has a couple Burst Lightnings in hand, doesn't have the ability to effectively remove a Preacher. So your best plan against it is to go very wide, create as many tokens as you can. That way, when you trade one in combat with the Burst Lightning for the Preacher, you still have a significant battlefield left over.
Makes sense. Swift Spear offering the trade with the Flood Pit Drowner. A play that respects Kaito, and Burst Lightning you. Boom, it's a 2-3. Gotcha.
So Hunter obviously could have killed the Flood Pit Surrounder and attacked for 2, but this is the exact same outcome. And he might get a little information on Jess's hand if they decide to, not block or force the action there. And maybe Hunter wants to save the Burst Lightnings for a later turn.
Yep. As here comes Preacher of the Schism. Token stays tapped. All right, now the shields are down. We even drew Talent, so we get to go Quarry Steelcutter into Talent. That's pretty powerful. Could even use Burst Lightning if you wanted to. I imagine you should probably just play your Talent and then do some other stuff from there. But here we are getting more monks. Notably, the Swift Spear is a 3-4 with the 2 monks being 2/2s, thanks to the Quarry Cutter.
And there's the mountain. Now we can just slam in. And if it just blocks the Swift Spear, you can send the Burst Lightning upstairs and push more damage.
Unenviable position to be in. Jess sort of trying to figure out, am I supposed to block the Swift Spear? Am I supposed to not block? Do I try and kill off one of these tokens?
A block on Swift Spear will be 8 damage after the burst. Burst upstairs plus the monks will be 3/3s. And it looks like Hunter went for the Preacher, which he did not need to do.
Yeah, a little oopsie poopsie moment there. I mean, you had triggered Prowess 3 times, but it's been a long weekend here for Hunter, making a lot of decisions. Just played a pretty stressful game, so understandable, but does miss out on 2 points. We'll have to see if that comes back to hurt Hunter Hansen.
He's low on resources at this point, so if he doesn't draw something like a stock up, that damage could be very relevant. He's also cost himself a monk by holding the Quarry Steelcutter for a turn.
All right. We're tapping down the monk, attacking in with everybody. Anoint and go for the third in hand here for Jess. Blocks the monk and looks to be waiting to kill one of these other tokens before damage, save a little life total.
Hit the equipped one. Now monk trades for a drowner. 1 comes across. So Jess has done a great job of controlling this battlefield. There will only be one attacker at the start of the turn, but Jess also has to imagine with this sleight of hand that these Corey Steel Cutters are going to trigger.
And this is why Corey Steelcutter is real. It's the awkward part of the matchup, right? You have a lot of mid-range grinding tools. You have stuff like the rest that can get it. But if the Corey Steelcutter comes down, you just need to have 2 spells to keep up good pressure on the opponent there.
Yeah. And this is why duress is important even when it's not taking Corey Steel Cutter. If you're duressing away their early resources, you limit their ability to trigger flurry turn after turn. You buy yourself some time to establish your creatures and try to turn the corner. But from this point, there's just not the tools in the Dimir midrange deck to contain these cutters. Jess needs Hunter to effectively brick for 4 or 5 draw steps.
Yeah, and Jess during that time, they need to draw very well. As another Flood Pit Drowner comes down, Jess is doing their best here to keep the pressure at bay, but only so much we can do. Looks like we have a torch to the tower, so we're going to get rid of this Flood Pit Drowner before blocks can happen. Trigger prowess on all of our friends. Oh, it looks like we even sacked the token that had a stun counter to get a scry in. That way, we'll try and chain more spells on the next turn. And this is a big attack here. Should be for about 8 damage, if I am counting correctly. And Jess has a go for the throat for this with Spear.
And this is all just delaying the inevitable. Jess is losing resources. Hunter, every now and again will find the 2 spells to flurry and effectively get 2 more cards. And even if Hunter finds a few lands off the top here, he can level the talent once he gets to 6. And now every spell is making an otter on top of every other effect.
Yep. And it looks like Stock Up was the last one in Hunter's hand.
And then eventually you draw a Stock Up and the game ends.
Yeah. And we're seeing Jess here. I think just sort of going through the motions, has double land in hand. Jess kept a little bit of, I think, a land heavy-ish hand, and this drew 1 too many lands this game, along with these Corey Steel Cutters going unimpeded. And now Hunter is going to be...
It was also a lot of 1-for-1 removal. The only real threat Jess had was that Preacher, and by the time they cast it, which was turn 3, the earliest they could cast it, they were so far behind to the Cutters that they had to trade it away in combat.
Makes sense.
That often happens with the first Preacher. So you need a couple threats here from the Dimir side in order to effectively turn the corner. The removal is just, spot removal does not beat Cutter.
Yeah. And that's crazy too, because that game Hunter actually forgoed getting the second Cutter in play as quickly as we could have. So like the game actually could have even been more out of reach, really showing why players love this prowess deck, even if they have matchups that sometimes can be challenging. Let's take a look here at Jess Williams' sideboard, though, to see what we're going to be bringing in potentially. In the sideboard, we have 1 Noise Affliction, 2 Disdainful Stroke, 2 Dreams of Steel and Oil, 2 Fairy Mastermind, 2 Ghost Vacuum, a Gix Command, 2 more Kaitos, 1 Negate, 1 Scavenger Regent, and 1 Shield of the Apocalypse. What do you like here and why, Ross?
So I very much like the Scavenger Regent, the Shieldred, the 2 copies of Dreams of Steel and Oil, the Gix's Command, and the Negate. So the Dreams of Steel and Oil, not as reliable as Duress, but it is a way to nab an early Cutter. Intimidation tactics would be better here. Dreams is better against Jeskai Oculus, so there's tension in that card choice. You'd rather have tactics in this matchup because it's so unreliable when you draw it later in the game. You love the ability to cycle it. But I think interacting early is so important in this matchup that I would have them in because you can't remove Cutter from the battlefield, so you need to take it from their hand as often as possible. The Shieldred is excellent in the matchup at turning the corner, and there's some threats in the main deck that aren't as good, like Kaido and Curiosity, so it's an upgrade there. I think Regent is also an upgrade because it can help you recover from a battlefield full of tokens. So even if they're able to make a couple tokens early with Cutter, if you're able to whittle down their resources from there and get them to stop triggering Flurry consistently, then clean up those tokens, suddenly your bigger creatures are now dominant on the battlefield. So having some sweepers is effective. Gix's Command, another effective sweeper there in that regard, also can help you turn the corner with the lifelink and pumping one of your own big creatures. And then Negate is just another way that can potentially stop Cutter. It also stops Stock Up. Disdainful Stroke counters neither of those cards and is awful in the matchup. So just Negate from the counter suite should be coming in.
All right, over in Hunt and Hanson's sideboard, we have a couple cards here that might be good. As we have 1 Abrade, 1 Disdainful Stroke, 2 Drake Catcher, 2 Ghost Vacuum, 1 Lithomantic Barrage, 2 Ral Crackling Wit, 1 Scorching Shot, 2 Spell Pierce, 1 Sunspine Links, 1 This Town Ain't Big Enough, and a Torch the Tower. Ross, what do you like and why?
So this is a matchup where they rip your hand apart and try to trade resources. Those are matchups where Ral is excellent. It can occasionally be bad if you've already fallen behind, but that's why the rest of your sideboard should be geared towards not falling behind. Scorching Shot, great answer to the big creatures from the Dimir midrange side. This Town Ain't Big Enough, another great answer. And the end game Storm Chasers talent loops are in play in this matchup and an excellent thing to play towards in a very late game. I also think the Torch of the Tower will be coming in at the very least over a copy of Burst Lightning. Burst Lightning has the advantage of being able to kill Preacher of the Schism when you kick it, but that doesn't come up very often. What comes up more often is Torch of the Tower being able to exile Carsey Revenant. And I think that is more important. There are 2 copies of Carsey Revenant in Jess Williams' list. So I would prefer Torch of the Tower. Sometimes you can also bargain to be able to kill a Shieldred in combat, and that's relevant. It just very rarely comes up that you kick Burst Lightning on Preacher.
All right. Well, these players are dealing up their hands, so let's head down to the future match area and see if Hunter Hansen can win 2-0 or if Jess can force us into a game 3. Still lots of hopes alive for Jess here, not out of it yet.
And looks like a Drowner, a Curiosity. I think that might be the Regent from the sideboard. And yeah, just sends that one away. That's a hand that you'd be fine keeping in a lot of matchups. This is not one of them. It doesn't interact with Cutter at all. It's not particularly fast. Just not exactly what you're looking for in the matchup.
Yep, both players going down to 6. They have better hands. And this is probably a big factor also in our players reaching here today, Ross, being disciplined going in mulligans. Obviously, these weren't the closest, hardest decisions in the world, but those hard spots where players keep hands that are a little too greedy when they could go to 6 and have a completely good hand. It makes or breaks tournaments.
Yes, and particularly from Jess's side, the Dimir midrange deck plays quite well off mulligans. It has a lot of powerful individual threats that can generate card advantage. It can punish opposing mulligans with the discard spells and the cheap interaction. So Jess is very happy if both players mulligan in these games. That is advantage Dimir for sure. I found that Dimir is very good at winning games where both players stumble, but if it's both players have their best hands, usually Dimir is behind because their deck is just altogether not as mana efficient as the other top decks in Standard, and especially not as mana efficient as Is It Prowess.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things about this deck in my mind is that, and this being Is It Prowess, is that it actually plays like basically as good a mid-range game as the Dimir mid-range deck does, right? Like it plays it can play very similar styles of games while being faster and more efficient. And that's some of the big selling points to me Is It Prowess. But both players have put something back. Dark Slick Shores pass the turn here for Jess into Shivan Reef. Gonna take a pang here for Hunter and see a Storm Chaser's talent.
The key cards for Hunter to be able to play on that mid-range level with Dimir, like you were talking about, are Storm Chaser's talent and answers to big creatures. Because if you can effectively trade for those creatures and stop them from generating card advantage, then your talent will take over as the game goes along and you'll win those attrition fights.
All right, Deep Cavern Bat sees slide up, stock up, Torch of the Tower, opt, and a mountain hiding back there. Ross, I imagine this is a take the torch moment, so you actually get to keep your bat around, but is there something better you like doing?
No, I like taking the torch here for sure. Hunter doesn't have a proactive play in his hand that is going to put you behind on tempo, which would be the one time you'd maybe take a different card. Like if there was a Corey Steel Cutter in hand, maybe you want to take that to prevent it from being cast on turn 2, force their hand to play the removal spell. Maybe you can find a duress or untap with mana for a counter spell. But here I would have just preferred to take the torch.
Yeah, it might be just trying to make sure that this Torch of Tower is actually gone and not another removal spell coming in to clear the bat. Could be just really wanting to protect something like Enduring Curiosity here.
It could be Spell Pierce. If there is Spell Pierce in Jess's hand, then taking the stock up, I think, makes sense. But even then, they're not going to stock up next turn. You could just take the torch and still have the Pierce up. So, and I don't quite understand this play.
All right, we drew a land here for Jess, so 2 islands in hand with a Flood Pit Drowner.
And that's unfortunate. If that turn was a Preacher of the Schism for Jess, they'd be in pretty good shape. It not being a Preacher and now giving Hunter time to set up and pull ahead again is a problem. Though Hunter does not really take advantage of it. Does not play out the stock up, potentially reading that there's a Spell Pierce in hand that isn't there.
Yeah. Hunter giving a lot of respect to this makes sense that this happens, and I'm in a good spot, so let's just wait around for a bit. And it might continue that way as Jess just has a bunch of lands in hand. We could see this Flood Pit Drowner go back into the deck and answer the Otter. Opt gets cast.
There's a Monstrous Rage that gets sent to the bottom. I think a Burst Lightning was the draw.
Yeah. Hunter maybe even playing around Spell Pierce here by waiting on the Burst Lightning.
Well,
could have done it to try to bait it and then slam stock up.
There's a Ral. So we're going to just opt for land, play stock up to bait out a Pierce, have the Ral next turn. Sunspine Links goes to the bottom off of that opt. Makes sense, stuck on only 3 lands. And then now found another Burst Lightning. Or is that Torch the Tower? Okay.
Right. Yeah. Upkeep does on the Flood Pit Drowner here. Trying to clearly respect Spell Pierce there, right? That's the spot where getting the Spell Pierce to be used would be the best for Hunter. Now Hunter can kind of assume that I've at least done my due diligence on trying to get the Spell Pierce out of hand.
Yeah.
And how do I want to lead? On stock up or Ral? Which one am I okay losing? Jig's up now.
Yeah. Jig's definitely up. And all Hunter did was give Jess more time to find a Pierce. Playing around those soft counter spells, you need to have the additional mana to reasonably say, I'm going to get to my stock up with Pierce mana available, in a good amount of time. And in this case, Hunter just didn't have additional lands, and it didn't really make sense for him to want to draw additional lands either. So I would have preferred to see, an earlier stock up, and he'd be in a commanding position in this game by now. He's still in a very good position because Jess is flooded out, but he gave Jess a few more draw steps to try to find something and get back into this game, especially since his hand didn't have a good answer to a big threat. If Jess had played something like an Archfiend of the Dross, a Shieldred, even a Preacher, that could have been a real problem for Hansen.
Jess draws the 4th Darklick Shores. 4 of a kind's not good enough here. As Hunter is going to play the Ral.
Yeah, he knows there was no Spell Pierce last turn. Time to jam the Ral before a creature comes down, and there's just no coming back from this position. The Dimir deck needs to be playing from ahead. That's been the secret for this Dimir midrange deck, even from way back in its heyday in November and December of last year. Kaito, Enduring Curiosity, Preacher of the Schism, all cards that generate card advantage, but only when you're attacking. And so the deck plays shockingly poorly from behind for being a mid-range deck. And one of the reasons it fell off in the metagame was the rest of the metagame sped up. So you weren't playing from ahead nearly as easily or nearly as often. And now, with a lot like the mouse decks on the decline and the Esper Pixie deck, especially on the decline, you're able to play from ahead against a lot of the lockdown decks. You have a big portion of the metagame where you can execute your game plan, and then you just bias your deck against Izzet Prowess to try to make that matchup salvageable. But it's still typically unfavorable, especially with Jess's list on only 2 copies of Duress, which I think is your best card in the matchup.
Stock up gets slammed. That's going to trigger Ral's passive, gain a loyalty. Get 2 spells. Play an island for turn. We picked up a side of hand last turn off the stock up. That's going to get us for 1 step closer to Ral. 1 more prowess trigger as well. So these are 3/3 otters. Bigger than the cut down we have. We found another stock up. The Izzet deck is very good at playing from ahead as well. You mentioned, Dimir plays well from ahead. Izzet does it in spades. As another otter comes down, attack for 9.
Yeah, and this Ral is going to ultimate next turn and end the game.
Or for 6, excuse me. Misspoke there. And Jess is going to cut down this otter.
Yeah, Hunter doesn't care.
And Jess draws the Restless Reef. It's just all lands here for Jess. An unfortunate run. A great day overall. And you hate to see it end like this, but it is something that can happen.
Need one more, Hunter. One more spell.
Yeah, any spell, and then you're gonna Ultra Ral, draw 3 cards, and all your non-creatures. I'm sorry, all your instants and sorcery have Storm.
Well, this
So
is
it's just
already lethal. The 2 otters and the monk are 8 damage, and the burst lightning deals 2.
Hunter's gonna draw 3. No Tashani's Tidebinder to stop it. Just 3 lands.
Yeah, Tidebinder has been a surprisingly good card in the matchup.
Yep. And then Storm, my Burst Lightning hit you. Just shows the hands. And congratulations to Hunter Hansen winning the trial today. Comes away with a lot of points, a lot of cash, and a W and a trophy as well. Jess put up a great fight, made the finals here, went undefeated today until this moment, but unfortunately just drew too many lands in game 1 and 2.
Yeah, flooded out a bit. And the Jameer deck is vulnerable to things like that, especially in matchups where you're playing from behind and your Kaidos and Curiosities aren't as reliable to draw cards. Your deck is a lot of 1-for-1s, suddenly not as reliable sources of card advantage. And if you draw a couple of extra lands, you run out of resources very quickly.
You know who doesn't though? Hunter Hansen. Congratulations on winning the tournament. Stock Up Did You Well. How you feeling?
I'm feeling really good. I actually haven't played an Energy since Energy Minneapolis about a year ago, so it was really nice to come back this weekend and play again.
Nice. That's so awesome.
Yeah, and taking a look over your particular list, I think everybody is aware of the Is It Prowess deck at this point. It's been dominating Standard for a couple weeks, but there is still a lot of variation in how players build their decks. You've gone with a more, let's say, classic build: 4 Slickshot Show Off main, the Hatchers relegated completely to the sideboard. Tell me about the thought process that went into, into that particular choice.
So that wasn't actually a choice that I would make again. I actually haven't played the 4 Slick Shot this whole time, but I have a buddy who's a better player than me, and I listened to what he did. I would switch back immediately, actually. I think the Drake Hatcher in the main is correct.
Okay, so you would have preferred to have 2/2 main?
Absolutely.
And are the other slick shots going to the sideboard for matchups where they're better, or are you just opening up that sideboard space?
I don't think so. If not, I probably would do just like 2 Slick Shots total, maybe a third. I saw a couple lists where it was like 4 Swift Spears, 3 Slick Shots, and 2 Drakes in the main. Maybe something like that, but I really don't know what I'm cutting. So, yeah.
That's fair. And how do you feel about playing this Is It Cutter deck in general? I mean, obviously you won a tournament, so you're going to be happy, right? But did you have fun playing this deck? Is this something you'd play again? Where's your head at with this?
Up until this card or Corey was released, my favorite card was Monastery Mentor. So this means I don't have to splash a third color. I still get to play all that same stuff. It's pretty much a dream come true for the card.
Makes sense.
Okay. And then my last question about the list. I'm curious about the one copy of This Town Ain't Big Enough in the sideboard. This is a shamelessly self-interested question because I'm thinking about playing one in my sideboard myself. So tell me about how this card was for you and whether you'd play it again.
Absolutely. So that one is basically a locked slot for me. I have really, really loved in the non-Orzhov lockdown matchups. The Orzhov lockdown matchup, it's whatever. But versus like Jeskai control, a lot of the times, if it's a really, really slow game, you'll end up bouncing a high noon and a lockdown on their end step, or you'll just start looping their lockdown in your Storm Chasers, and you just start going through that loop once you're in the late game, and they can't do anything about it.
Makes a lot of sense to me. Well, Hunter, before we go, is there anything you want to shout out or say? The mic is yours.
I would like to apologize to my mother because I should have been there for Mother's Day, but I'm not. So we'll continue that trend and have everyone a happy Mother's Day.
Hey,
I like it.
You have enough money to buy an I'm sorry present, so I think
That's
you'll
fair.
be okay.
Yeah. Consider using that there. Well, Hunter, thank you so much for sitting down and talking to us today. Go enjoy the rest of your day, and we will hopefully see you at future NRG events in the future.
I'll be there.
Love to hear it. Well, Ross, it's the end of the day. It's the end of the weekend. We've had over 20 matches of Magic on camera. So much going on. It's been a blast to have you in the booth with you here today. But unfortunately, it's time for today's show to end. Any thoughts on anything before I wrap it all up here when it comes to Standard and people heading into the RC? And we have a lot of people watching, talking in chat about what they want to do in the RC. What's the Ross Merriam advice?
So My advice is to worry less about what deck you want to play and worry more about exactly how you're building it. Because we kind of have an idea of what the established archetypes are. I think, Is It Prowess is the default best deck, but we saw plenty of other decks in the top eight. You noted that we had more cutters in yesterday's modern top eight than we did today in standard. Demir midrange having success. The Orzhov Pixie deck was in the top eight. We had a mono black demons deck. We had a mono red mouse deck with cutter in it. So I think if you tune your deck well and your plans are good, you can win with a lot of different things in this standard environment. And there's a ton of different ways to build every single deck. We've talked about a lot of little micro decisions on how you build the Is It Prowess deck, which 2-drops you play, which removal you play, how you sideboard, do you change things on the play and the draw? Those micro decisions happen across every single deck in this standard environment. And so having a well-tuned list for the weekend is incredibly important. So if you're waffling on your deck choice right now, pick one, lock it in, and work on getting your deck well tuned. That will serve you better in this standard format right now than making a slightly better deck choice overall, but having a worse list of it because you had less time to prepare it.
I like that advice. Well, thank you everyone that made this event go on today when it comes to the staff of NRG, to Norm for helping put on the coverage, to the production side and who is behind the camera talking to us, making all this happen. Without you, this wouldn't be possible. We wouldn't be able to bring these people paper magic here on Twitch. So thank you so much for making that happen. If you're watching on Twitch, you don't want to miss any of our future events, click that follow button, and we'll see you all very soon for our next event, June 28th and 29th. It's going to be standard on Saturday, Team Final Fantasy on Sunday. We'll see you there.